So everybody's arguing over how smart agents are going to get, but nobody is arguing over the very thing that actually determines if they work. The second I exited the Ritz-Carlton, the valet attendant said, "Mr. Bauman, your car is going to pull up any second." I was confused. I didn't give him my ticket. I didn't give him the name of my car. But sure enough, 3 seconds later, there was my car pulling up. I build AI agents for a living, and I'm pretty bullish on them. I ship them every single day. But that night, that valet attendant, he did something that no context file, no skill file, no self-improving memory file, and ultimately no agent could ever do. The reason your agent may feel cheap at times has nothing to do with how smart it is. You could double your model quality tomorrow, but it still will not provide a human experience like I just described at the Ritz-Carlton. And I want to make it clear, that is not an anti-AI take. In fact, I'd argue that the vast majority of people using AI are actually underbuilt. At the end of the day, the reality is we're all optimizing for the wrong thing. And I know this because I've spent the last 4 months trying to reverse engineer what happened to me that night. When I look back, there were 4 moving parts, and I could build for all 4 of them. In fact, I've shipped versions of all 4. And I'm going to show you why it still wouldn't have landed on me. But first, you need to know why I was even there, because the story doesn't work if you don't. About 1.5 years ago, I was having a really bad week at work. It was so bad that I was actually experiencing some pretty bad mental and physical health issues. It was so severe that at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, I called my mentor. And at the end of that call, he said, "Pack a bag, grab your girlfriend, drive up to Palm Springs, and get away for the weekend." And so I did. The entire car ride up there, I was only thinking about how I was probably going to waste a ton of money because I wouldn't have fun anyway. But eventually, I remember having this very vivid thought that was along the lines of, what good is money if you're miserable? So I ended up going on a splurge. So as we descended from the mountains into Palm Springs, we began to have conversations about where we should go and eat. My girlfriend was mentioning things like In-N-Out, fast food, things that are good, but I wasn't gonna have that night. I said, we're going somewhere nice. I go to Palm Springs all the time for various conferences, and I've been wined and dined by a ton of different CEOs and executives. And one night, I specifically remember just being in awe of the Ritz-Carlton. Oh, I said to my girlfriend, just like every person you hate, babe, we're going to the Ritz. Now, I had completely forgotten in that moment that every dinner I had in Palm Springs was covered by my boss or a CEO. I had no idea what the cost of the Ritz-Carlton was for dinner. I was flying in blind. My girlfriend asked me, "Is the Ritz good? What is the Ritz?" And I said, "It's like a nicer version of Outback." And I genuinely thought that. I thought it'd be in the Ruth's Chris range. So we pull up and I'm looking for general parking, and there wasn't any. Now, if you've been to the Ritz-Carlton, you already know that general parking isn't a thing. They only do valet. Talk about being humbled as someone who just called it the Ritz. Eventually, the valet guy waved me down and he came to my door and he said, "Are you looking for something?" I said, "Yeah, I'm trying to go to dinner with my girlfriend." He said, "Oh, you're in the right place." And I said, "You guys have general parking?" He said, "Oh, no, sir, it's complimentary." It was at that moment I knew this was no Outback. Now call me modest, but I didn't even know complimentary valet was in the human vernacular. But I handed him my keys, we walked in, and I didn't even think about it that much. But that guy clocked me, knew, based off of my reaction, that I had never stayed at the Ritz-Carlton and that I was a new guest. Which makes sense because if you've been to the Ritz-Carlton, you would know that there is no general parking. But here's what I want to emphasize. He didn't read the ticket he gave me. He read me. So here's the first question I would challenge you to ask about your agentic suite. Do your agents know the difference between someone brand new and someone that's been loyal to you for over 2 years? Taking it a step further, are they able to know without even telling you? Because if you have to tell your agents to continuously treat various types of customers based off of how long they've been shopping with your business, then that really isn't all that intelligent. Most agents don't, and that's because they're only working within that session. Anything before that session might as well have not existed. And yes, it is buildable to create agents that can self-improve, and hopefully, someday, most likely, they will be on the degree where they can remember various sessions over the course of many years. But hold on to that. We're gonna talk about that in a second. But now let me get back to my story, because if that was the end of it, Fine, interesting experience. But what I want to emphasize is that that was a well-trained employee. That wasn't just your run-of-the-mill valet guy. The reason I'm telling you that is because 90 minutes later, a different valet guy acted on what he noticed. So we get to the restaurant, I'm starving, she's starving, and the hostess says, I don't see your name in the reservation book. It was not what I wanted to hear. If you may recall, I was not in a great headspace that night. I remember thinking, yep, my luck. Drove 2 hours out here, and we're leaving the Ritz to go to In-N-Out. But before we could even exit, she said, let me see what I can do. And what I noticed is she was so calm about it. She had a full house that night. It was slammed in there. And she didn't go to her manager. She didn't escalate it. She eventually just came back and said, walk with me. And I was trained by a father who says, you don't ask, you don't get. And as we were walking, I said, hey, do you guys happen to have any tables by the window? I was feeling pretty selfish that night, but she made it happen. Not only a window seat, I dare say the best seat. And I vividly remember sitting in that booth, which was extremely comfortable, overlooking the Coachella Valley, and it was beautifully lit, and thinking to myself, I needed this. I needed this win, because it was a hard week. And just having a nice gesture done, a small thing really, but a big thing to me in that moment. And I've never forgotten that. So what's the big punchline with this lovely individual in the restaurant? She didn't escalate things because she was already at the top. She already knew. So the second big question I would challenge you and your agentic suite is that when you have an agent that can't do something, what does it do? Does it do nothing? Does it pawn it off? Or does it proactively problem solve? Because a handoff is your system telling the customer, I can't help you. And that's not usually a capability limit. That's a permission you didn't grant them. It's also buildable, 2 for 2. But the story only gets crazier. At this point, I was thinking, nice guy at the valet, really nice people here in the restaurant, but then the whiskey showed up. So we're sitting there, enjoying the view, looking at the menu, looking at the prices, quickly realizing this is not an Outback, and we didn't even know how to pronounce like any of the drinks. I saw whiskey on one of them, and so I said, should I get the whiskey one? It was also the cheapest one. And she said, sure, you love whiskey. And back then I did. A lot. I don't drink anymore, but back then I did. And that's important because about 45 seconds later, this clean-cut kid is walking towards our table, and he's holding a plate, and there's like this glass jar on top, and he comes over, says, Mr. Bauman, would you like to sample our fancy-dancy whiskey? The same whiskey that I was just discussing with my girlfriend? At that point, I knew something was going on. I turned to Christine and we both said at the same time, you were just talking about that. It wasn't a coincidence. Now I didn't know it then, but I would come to find out that the Ritz-Carlton intentionally assigns anywhere from 5 to 6 servers to each table. And in the moment, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was a little much, but with hindsight, it was pretty smart. What they are doing is they are intentionally walking around eavesdropping. Not in any malicious way, they're trying to predict what you're going to ask them before you even do. Now you might be thinking, I don't know, that's a little creepy. I got news for you. Your phone's listening to you, you have cookies on your phone, if you have an Alexa, forget it. At least at the Ritz, it's a human being bringing me drinks as opposed to just simply spying on me. But here's the big punchline. I wasn't talking to them, and that's exactly why it worked. But this leads me to question number 3. And I can guarantee you barely anyone is building for this. Your agent only listens when someone is typing into a box. What about everything else the customer says that isn't a prompt? For example, the support ticket they closed without a resolution. Or what about that time a customer mentioned something on a call? Or perhaps about that product feature they mentioned in passing 8 months ago but have not brought it back up since. That is all signal, and most companies throw it all away because it doesn't come in as the form of a request. Now, it is definitely harder to build this out, but it is definitely worth it because you will surprise and delight your customers. By now, my marketing antennas were up and I knew something was running under this place, but I had no idea how far it went. And then we went outside to admire the view after our dinner. So after paying the bill that was significantly more than my Outback bill, we were getting up and the waitress said, thank you for coming. We really appreciated you guys. And I said, thanks. Is it okay if we actually go out that door? We want to enjoy the view before we leave. She said, of course, go ahead. And so after about 10 minutes of admiring the view, I turn around and one of those same young kids who was pretending to busboy our table, locked eyes with me. I thought that was a little odd, but whatever, young kid, more signal. He wasn't cleaning our table, so the walk back was about 400 yards. So as I'm about 20 yards away from the exit, I'm reaching for my ticket. And as soon as I got out the front door, I'm talking maybe a foot, that is when a different valet person says, "Mr. Bauman, your car is pulling up any second." I was in shock. Actually, shock isn't the right word. It was this weird emotion of confused and what is going on. Because sure enough, 3 seconds later, my original valet guy is pulling up in my car right on cue. It was a well-orchestrated symphony that I wish all of you could experience. After the whole magical aurora wore off, here's what actually happened, and here's why I emphasized the valet in the beginning. The valet guy at the beginning of our visit put 2 and 2 together pretty quickly, and he knew we were not guests, and this would be a great opportunity to leave a great first impression. So through their sophisticated technology that they have built out themselves, and yes, that is true, he was able to tell the restaurant, make sure you wow him, which is probably why I got my window seat. But also what is mind-blowing is that that kid was waiting there just to find out when we were turning around to go back to our car. And they knew we were. There's no triggered system out there besides human-to-human communication that could have known that we were not guests and that we were going nowhere except the parking lot because we needed our car. So as soon as we got there, they started identifying a way to surprise and delight me. They knew that I didn't know that valet was complimentary, and so they took that as a huge opportunity to really impress me. So I could not stop thinking about this. In fact, for the next 3 to 4 months, I was reading everything I could about the Ritz-Carlton and what made them so special. And what I found is that it essentially comes down to 2 main things. The first one is actually one that I've already alluded to, and that's that they spent the money to build out their own proprietary CRM. Now, the first one you have probably guessed, and it's a CRM. In fact, it's a proprietary CRM that allows their employees to converse with each other in damn near real time. So for example, as soon as I got out of my car, the valet attendant was already talking through that tool, I'm assuming, to the restaurant to let them know that I was coming over. Or even more impressively, like I stated previously, as soon as we turned around after admiring the view, a call was made to the valet. So if we're to break this down, what is all this? In this tool, they're passing along preferences, notes, tips, and all of it's moving between people that don't even interact with each other on a direct basis. You might call it a memory layer. Now, the second one I definitely did not see coming. I only learned about it after reading Horst Schulze's book about customer experience and how he got the Ritz-Carlton to have the iconic name that it has. In that book, I learned that every single employee, all the way from housekeeping up to the CEO, has a $2,000 budget per guest. And what that budget is for is to provide next level magical experiences, just like what I got, if they see the opportunity. So what's the big learning here? Unlike most of America, where only the marketing team has access to the CRM, at the Ritz-Carlton, every single employee has access, and not only has access, is encouraged to use the CRM. But let's take it a step further. They empower every single employee. They trust every single employee with $2,000 to surprise and delight a customer if they see the opportunity to do so. The CRM itself is actually the cheap part. The expensive part is the trust that the company has in every single employee. So now let me do the thing that I actually get paid for and tell you how I would actually go about building that. Now, the CRM is the memory layer. Easy, I can do that. Now, having persistent memory that is shared across agents so that not just one agent, but all agents are able to identify if an individual is new or a loyalist and has been with the company shopping and purchasing for over 2 years. That's something that rung my bell and is something that I've been working on implementing at scale. Now let's take, for example, the hostess, where she didn't escalate a problem. Instead, she found a solution. That's just simply giving her the right permission to be able to do that. Now, the whiskey is a passive signal capture. That one is a bit harder, but doable. All you have to do is listen to everything the customer says that wasn't a request. Now, the car would be a proactive trigger that is leveraged with an infrared state. I've shipped versions of that, but nothing too complex. So I can build all 4. It's the same memory, same authority, same listening, and the same anticipation. So from an agentic standpoint, I could have done the same thing. In fact, I probably could have done it better. I could have put an agent in every single room, listening, inferring, and actioning, and it probably would have been smarter, more cost effective, and it probably would not have worked. In fact, I know it would not have worked. And that's because I left out the only part that actually matters. When that kid came over with the whiskey, it wasn't that he got the drink right. It was that another human being overheard that I might be interested in something on the menu, decided to do something about it, spent someone else's money just to ensure that I had a great experience. And the kicker is, 1, I wasn't even staying there as a guest, and 2, it's not like I'm some big celebrity, but boy did I sure feel like a VIP by the end of the night. As dramatic as this sounds, I felt chosen, and that is the whole thing. Run that equation through an agent and the drink still arrives, right on time. In fact, the timing might be a few seconds better, but nobody chose me in that case. I was simply evaluated by a condition, and with an agent, that condition is always going to be set to true. And customers can tell the difference, not consciously, not on a survey. Humans are smart. They're able to know when there's a system running that someone programmed and informed these agents to surprise and delight, versus when it truly feels authentic and genuine. So technically, the action is clonable, but the authorship was not. Everybody is optimizing for intelligence right now. More memory, more silicon, smarter models, longer context, more compute. The list is a mile long, and intelligence is getting cheaper and more distributed every single quarter. Your competitor is going to eventually have the same exact brain that you have. It's just a matter of time until they catch up. Sure, you might have an advantage from an agentic standpoint for a year or two, but eventually everything reverts back to the mean. It's how everybody has access to a CRM now. So sure, there's a lot of people out there in corporate America that don't know what a Hermes agent is, or they don't know what Airbyte and ClickHouse are, and they don't know how to streamline data, but I guarantee you, in just a few short years, they will. And to make matters worse, the bigger the company, the more compute, the more budget, and the little guys, the small businesses, you're not gonna be able to keep up. When you have thousands and thousands of agents compounding memory versus your 5 to 10 Hermes agents, forget it. So the point here is that right now, everybody is obsessed with buying and figuring out how to get a smarter brain. The Ritz-Carlton bought the authority to allow a 19-year-old to care. Now, I'm not telling you to stop building agents. I build them, they're not going anywhere. And honestly, if you're like me, it's fun running them. That said, the next time you hear someone bragging about their Hermes agent and how smart and sophisticated it is, just know it's not even scratching the surface in terms of what it could actually be doing for a human being. So just because you have a ton of cron jobs and memory layers, that's ultimately not your differentiator. In fact, it's your floor. And most companies aren't even close to it yet. So go get it. But I want to make this very clear. You're not buying a replacement for a human being. The companies that are going to win are going to take on the Ritz-Carlton approach. The agent is going to do nothing more than free up time so that that human being can provide more next level experiences. Now, if you ask me, in my opinion, that's what true long-term ROI looks like. And more importantly, as us marketers call it, that's what actual customer lifetime value looks like as well. I think gone are the days where most e-commerce companies and companies in general are going to be measuring customer lifetime value in 3-month, 6-month, and 12-month increments, which if you think about it, is pathetic. It shocks me that most companies bank on the fact that after a year, the customer is essentially dead to them. And it's called customer lifetime value. So in case I haven't made myself clear by now, the agent's job is not to be the human being. It's to allow the human being to go treat other human beings like a human being. Human capital is a real thing. It's not a buzzword. And I genuinely believe that the companies that make the brutal mistake of laying more and more people off, instead of taking the time to train them and provide value in other ways, are going to find themselves in now you might disagree with me and you might think agents are going to take over. And we'll just have to disagree there. If you look at history, time has shown that the brands that are always customer-centric, no matter what, always end up winning. The Ritz-Carlton being one of them. They've survived every technological revolution. And as we talked about today, they're on top of their technology. They just don't show it. I think the biggest thing that the Ritz-Carlton does exceptionally well, and there are many, but it's that it empowers its employees to do amazing things. Every single one of them. I personally have never been given $2,000 to go ensure that I put a smile on one of our customers' face. No, I was always told to find ways to save money, discount less, cut costs here. That usually doesn't work, and history has shown that. So with that, I'll leave you there. If you made it this far, I appreciate you watching. I would love to hear your thoughts. But with that said, I love you guys. And until next time, cheers.